internal politics. We'll go back to the ad hoc committee a little bit later. Our reporter Heidi Jokos has flown down to Cape Town specifically for the story. Heidi Jokos, hello to you. Let's bring everyone up to speed. What do you have?
Very good afternoon to you, Gareth, as well as to our viewers. We are joined by Dr. Dion George, who was a Minister of Environmental Affairs as well as a DA member. He is joining us this afternoon to give his side of the story. But before we get into the interview, he would like to share a statement. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon on eNCA. You can go ahead and read your statement.
Thank you very much. Today, I have written to the Democratic Alliance to cancel my party membership that I have held since 1995. I also resign as the party's chairperson of Federal Finance and as a Member of Parliament of the Republic of South Africa, where I was first sworn in on 17 January 2008. The situation has become intolerable. I'm being pushed out, and it is no longer feasible for me to remain in the party. I heard via the media on 7 November 2025 that John Steenhuisen had written to the President to request my removal as Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment while I was representing our country at COP30 in Brazil. My attorneys have requested documents and they are not provided, and no proper explanation in writing are received. I was provided with a gag order from the party on the 24th of November 2025 after I defended myself in the media. This did not apply to others, such as Willie Oukamp and John Steenhuisen, who both continued to attack me without any response or support from the party. I cannot remain in a party that has, through the actions of its current leader, John Steenhuisen, been captured by the African National Congress and other criminal interests. The result of this capture is that the DA has been completely muzzled and lost its voice and its ability to lead in South Africa's interest. When the DA decided to join the Government of National Unity, I assessed the risk that the DA could be swallowed up by the ANC. However, I supported the DA joining the GNU because I believed it was the best available option in the interests of the country. It is still my view, with skillful leadership, while jealously guarding our integrity, the DA's participation in the GNU could have worked. Instead, Steenhuisen, as the DA leader, has been captured because of his personal financial vulnerabilities. I've submitted a comprehensive complaint to the Public Protector, setting out how Steenhuisen abused his position under the influence of criminal interests and illicit networks to remove me as the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. In that leadership role, I did not bow, bend or blink under the pressure of the ANC, illicit wildlife traffickers, or the criminal captive lion industry in particular. I spoke up and fought to protect South Africa's amazing and spectacular wildlife and natural resources for her people as one of our nation's great treasures. To cover up the actual reason for my removal, a smear campaign was attempted, and when it failed, the reason became my refusal to take on the role of Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, although I was never formally offered the DTRC role. I worked fearlessly for South Africa by holding ANC-appointed department officials to account for corruption and leading several initiatives to combat illicit wildlife trafficking that included closing the terrible and criminal captive lion industry that would be a stain on the integrity and conscience of our nation. I frequently clashed with ANC leaders, Gwede Mantashe and Koscienso Ramokgopa, since I had a responsibility to hold them to account on mining appeals and emissions. I did my job without fear, favour or prejudice, but I discovered that that was not what Steenhuisen wanted. He wanted co-option. He wanted to remain in the GNU at any cost to the party values and principles and to the country's interests. Steenhuisen effectively muzzled the DA Parliamentary Caucus into silence on issues crucial to South Africa, including the cost of black economic empowerment and the ANC's ongoing collusion with authoritarian governments against our vital allies, like the United States. This week, the DA supported all the budgets the ANC submitted, including the DTRC and the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, that colludes with the enemies of the democracies around the world. I cannot support a government and a party that perpetuates race laws. I cannot support a government and a party that invites South Africa's dangerous authoritarian adversaries into our most sensitive and critical infrastructure to exploit our country and nation's precious resources for their own nefarious gains. I cannot support a party whose leader has completely compromised its values and principles for his personal gain, while South Africans cannot find jobs and are not safe at home. The DA deserves a leader of a higher caliber. The DA's Federal Legal Commission whitewash of Steenhuisen's credit card misuse was the final straw for me. The FLC report submitted this week is a reflection of what the party has become under failed leadership. As the chairperson of Federal Finance, I raised record amounts of money for the DA's work to oppose the ANC and to build a better South Africa. Because of a reputation I helped to build for the DA of integrity, strong financial controls, and sound stewardship of the money entrusted by our donors. I removed the credit card provided to Steenhuisen by the DA in March 2025 at the end of the last financial year because of serious financial irregularities. At that time, the expenses Steenhuisen incurred could not be reconciled. He was abusing DA donors' money by incurring expenses for which the card was not intended. He incurred the irregular expenses despite the fact that the DA, at his request, was paying him an additional allowance so that his annual compensation was on par with that of the Deputy President. The statement issued by the DA on 12 January is an attempt to whitewash these irregularities and hide the truth from DA voters and donors. When I removed the credit card as chairperson of Federal Finance in March 2025, the credit card could not be reconciled. The only way a full reconciliation could occur, as claimed by the DA-FLC, is by subsequently cooking the books. It must be asked, who did that reconciliation? This matter requires a full and independent forensic investigation that is disclosed to the DA's voters and donors before the upcoming DA conference in April. Steenhuisen's personal financial vulnerabilities leaves the DA with a leader who cannot challenge the ANC in the GNU, who is willing to throw countless loyal, hard-working DA leaders like me to the wolves when they stand up for DA members and South Africa's interests, and who cannot exit the GNU under any circumstances, given that he is completely financially compromised. South Africa has entirely lost its way in its economic policy and foreign policy under the GNU. The government has not been able to negotiate the same low 10% tariff rate of other African countries with the United States. It will come at a huge price in jobs, economic growth, and safety for ordinary South Africans. The DA leadership is unable to defend and articulate the clear blue waters that previously existed between the DA and the ANC on issues that are crucial for South Africa's future. Instead, they are silent because they know if they speak up like I did, they will be axed and their reputations trashed. They all know Steenhuisen as the DA leader is financially compromised and now beholden to the ANC president. If South Africa is going to be a healthy democracy that South Africans demand and deserve, the country needs a strong, clear, uncaptured voice. The DA could have been that voice, even in the GNU, but that required an uncorruptible leader. The DA has one final shot to make a vital and positive change in April, and the party had better not miss this chance. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. George. Take me through your emotions. That was a very lengthy and deep statement. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling relieved on the one hand, and also very, very deeply saddened, because I have been a member of the DA for 30 years, and on the 1st of March this year would have been a public representative for 20. So I've been in the DA for more than half of my life. Also, I'm deeply saddened because out there are thousands of DA councillors and hundreds of MPs and MPLs who work their fingers to the bone. They grind away every single day. The DA councillors' work never stops. The workload is massive. They do not deserve this kind of thing to be happening to them. So the DA councillors and the MPs and the MPLs who deserve so much better than this, it is deeply saddening to me because they grind out there and what they want to do is make our country better. And then this is what happens to our party. And this is the huge tragedy. So I feel very emotional about it, obviously, because I've spent so much time. That is, you know, most of my adult life I have been in the DA. My blood is blue. It still is, you know. And so, yeah, it's very emotional. But it is the thing I had to do. I've been gagged since November. My reputation has been trashed. There was all sorts of terrible things being said that were totally unsubstantiated. What did it do to my family? I was fired when I was in Brazil, on the other side of the world, and I never even heard it from the party. I heard it from Carol Payton, who called me before I did the president's speech, because the president had asked me to go early to Belém to deliver his speech at the leaders' conference because he couldn't go. So I went early. I'd been to Rio. I also was invited by United for Wildlife, Prince William's Trust, to talk about South Africa's combating illicit wildlife trafficking. I did a speech there. And then at Belém, just before I delivered the president's speech, which I read verbatim, I got a call from Carol Payton, and she said, are you going to resign as minister? And I said, no. And she said, is there going to be a reshuffle? And I said, I don't know. And then it broke in the media. My team that was busy negotiating, was I was the co-chair of adaptation for COP30. They were devastated. And I said, look, just relax. Just, you know, we don't have any details. I'm still the minister until the president actually fires me. I don't really know. So just carry on. Do not blink. Just keep going. And that's what happened. But I was on the other side of the world. And then what happened was, obviously, I got a letter from the president on the 11th. On the 12th, he announced it. Then, of course, there was this mad media frenzy. I was in Brazil, away from home, on government business. I then told the president of COP, I said, look, I've been dismissed. But I'd already done a lot of work, you know, before that, so that I could set up what we needed to do. So the outcome was reasonable, I think. And then, of course, the NGOs, who, interestingly, I used to abrase with quite a lot when I was the minister, they started asking questions, like, why has George been fired? And then there was, well, you know, there was no reason, because I still don't have a reason. We don't know what the reason is. But then what happened was, then a smear campaign started. In fact, it was so bad that one of the journalists, who, you know, I jokingly say that he's one of the more, you know, interesting ones, actually contacted me and he said, you know what? There's a smear campaign going on against you. Who do you think it is? And I said, well, actually, I'm not sure, because I was across the world. I mean, it was done deliberately to destabilize me. You know, it was a very difficult time, you know. Luckily, though, I'm strong. You know, I've been around for a long time, so I'm stronger than a herd of elephants.
So I'm going to interject here, because I need to understand at what point you decided, this is it for me, I'm resigning. Because you mentioned in your statement that you took the credit card away from John Steenhuisen in March. You were only fired in November. The allegations in your affidavit to the public protector speak about cadre deployments and why you actually think you were dismissed. Take us through that.
Well, my relationship with John Steenhuisen was deteriorating. I mean, as it's been mentioned, I mean, we haven't been buddies or anything, but, you know, we've been pretty close and supportive of one another. Around August times, 22nd of August, John had called me to his office and said that there were a number of complaints that had come from the department. They were basically about taking away delegations, not signing the fracking regulations, etc. Things that I said, well, yes, of course, I'm holding everybody to account. I mean, you know, I was taking action against the chief director of communications because he was doing things in the department that were not permitted, like doing business with the department through a front company. So I was taking a lot of action. So I was, obviously, I didn't go in there to get co-opted. I got there to do my job. So anyway, that was, you know, and John had said, well, you know, these complaints. There was no other complaints about anything else. Any other allegations, nothing. But throughout the time, I was obviously working on closing the captive lion industry, which is South Africa's policy, the DA's policy. John did say to me that I should meet with the captive breeders. Yes, I should meet with them because it's awkward, etc. And I'd said, I can't do that because we're in court on a number of things, you know. So it's irregular, you can't do that.
So I'm sorry to interject. You are the minister who's in charge of the hunting, and that falls under your department. Yes. The Minister of Agriculture, who so happens to be the leader of the Democratic Alliance, calls you and says, please meet up with the captive breeders.
Yes.
And you said what to him? I
said, well, I can't, because we're in court on the quotas, on the hunting, the hunting quotas, the zero quota for the lion bones, and of course on well-being, the well-being clause. You know, you can't do that, because if I meet with them, I've got to meet with everybody else, because I'm going to get accused, because everybody watches, of course. You know, it was the same when we were looking at the demarcating the areas for the penguins in the fisheries. Sure. I spoke to the fisheries and all the NGOs, so you've got to do that. So, and then, of course, he came up with the idea, and he claims that it was somewhere in his mandate. He didn't say this to me, though, but only now, that the idea was that there is a thing called ranched wildlife. So in other words, that once wildlife is now farmed, it now belongs to agriculture. Now, of course, I don't agree with that, of course, because, well, I was in finance. I still am in finance. That's all I've ever known. And then I became the Minister for Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. And there I discover that there is this thing that is still around, the caged lion killing is still here, and that there's this industry that believes that wildlife is now like domestic animals, it's like farming. It's not. So it's fundamental difference. So he was interfering with my mandate, and that was an issue. And I raised it, and I said, no, I can't meet with them. We are in court, but it wasn't acrimonious. It was just, obviously, I mean, I'm clear. I say what's on my mind, and I do that, obviously. I mean, I've been around for a very long time. So, but that's where the relationship was abrasing. And I do know that he was getting a tremendous amount of pressure from that group. Very much so. People from in various parts of the country, because I was moving, and I said to him, I am going to get this done.
So you were asked, while you were the minister, to meet with certain organizations. You didn't. Soon later, you were fired. You were removed as the minister. You were not told, and Willie Okamp becomes the minister.
Yes.
You allege that there's cadre deployment. Why are you saying that? Which is interesting, because the Democratic Alliance has taken the ANC to court because of...
I know, yeah. Well, the hypocrisy is astounding. I think, well, there's 87 people in the caucus. Why is it that Willie Okamp is to be the minister when he is aware of and close to the wildlife ranching industry? It's an open fact. He went and saw them. I was the minister, but the DA sent him and another colleague to some conference, etc. So the reason why it's cadre deployment is why that person? Why that very person who it was raised that there's conflict? There's a conflict of interest. I mean, I came from finance. I had no conflicts at all. I said to everybody, well, you know, I'm the new minister. I'm going to have to learn all of this thing. I don't know anybody in the fisheries or in the forestry or in this industries, which is good, because then you can make up your own mind without fear, favor, or prejudice. But here is somebody that is very close to the industry, obviously, and close to them, and we see now what's happening. Now, what's going to happen with the zero-bone quota? What happened to the uplisting of the abalone at CITES? So these, it's already the signs are quite interesting. For example, there was the court case, the Dideric's court case, which I was appealing from the department, which is about the rhino horn trade. So what's happening to that? So when you put somebody into a department where they have got close ties, or it's difficult to be independent and impartial. I mean, obviously we all know people, that's perfectly fine, but that's the complexity.
So let's speak about how John Steenhuisen literally came up to you and said, I want to take this part of your department and move it into my department. Do you believe that that was because he wanted to take control, and because he was unable to take control around lion hunting and captive lions, that's why he fired you?
I do believe so, yes. I do believe that because initially when the news broke, because I was not told, remember, it came, I heard via Carol Payton, and then it was in the media that this letter had been written. But it was very clear that John's idea was that this wildlife ranching should be a thing and that it should be under the Department of Agriculture. But of course it doesn't belong there. That would include things like once a lion is in a cage, well then it's farmed and therefore belongs here. So that, I think, is certainly what was in his mind. Now, I'm not sure why that is the case.
Let me ask you this, Dr. George. What do Willie Okamp and John Steenhuisen stand to gain from allowing lion captivity and lion hunting in South Africa? Why do they so badly want this in South Africa, or allow it to continue?
It is a very, very strong lobby group and a very strong interest group. Now, what was quite interesting, I only thought of after, was that when Barbara Creasy started working on phasing out the industry, we had a council meeting, and then just out of the blue there was a resolution that came for sustainable hunting. And I still raised the point at that meeting, and I was not even aware of anything. I said, I'm worried about the so-called caged lion killing, etc. Oh no, it's not that, it's about sustainable hunting. I was the only person that abstained on that resolution, because there was a lot more going on in the background. Because I think what was happening is Barbara Creasy, the former minister, was starting to move on the lion, captive lion industry. There was this high-level panel, or the ministerial task team, and they were starting to move. But no action had happened at all. Nothing had happened yet. The process had started. And that industry, yes, so they were buying forward cover. Yes. So I moved in, and I think somebody articulated at some point that, oh, what a surprise that the DA minister, last person you expect, would carry on going down this road. And of course my response was, yes, absolutely. It's DA policy to close down this industry.
So John Steenhuisen was going against his own party's policy by trying to force you to firstly do away with the policy when it comes to captive lion hunting, and to basically benefit allegedly himself as well as Willie Okamp, considering the organizations they belong to.
Yes, in fact, at one point he said to me, because when we had this meeting where he said, oh, the department's unhappy about these things, whatever the case is, he then threw in tangentially and said, you know, you'd be really great in the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, because you've got a US passport, you know finance, etc., so you would be good in that role. Not that it was never offered to me formally. And I said, no, I'm busy with all this countering illicit wildlife trafficking. I'm holding my department to account. No, there's no way that it would make sense for me to do that. So no, I wouldn't do that, but it was never put to me. So I do believe that it was lined up over time. And I think also that John is friendly to people in that industry. We've seen photographs, etc. So, I mean, obviously it doesn't imply anything. But certainly if you can only really judge people on the actions. And me, what my experience was, having been I'm a seasoned politician, I've been around forever, I'm senior in the party, it was very clear to me that he was getting pressure. I actually got the impression that he was under duress of some kind, that he was getting...
And under duress would be by who, from who?
I think from the industry. I think the industry obviously were very unhappy. They saw, here's George, he's competent, and I said at several points, I'm going to get it done. And I really am going to get this done.
Basically trying to pull favors for his friends in the industry. Is that what you suggest?
I think so, yes. I do think so.
Let's speak about whether or not you think John Steenhuisen is corrupt.
I think that corrupt is a very sort of emotionally charged word. I think he's compromised. I think he's compromised because he is financially vulnerable. I don't know the details of his financial affairs. I did not leak anything in terms of this 150,000 credit card that he didn't pay, whatever. I knew nothing about that. I simply answered a question from a journalist who called me and said, did you take away John's credit card? The Federal Finance Committee, they wrote the Federal Finance Committee took away the card. That wasn't true. I took away the card. Obviously, it was out there.
And you took away the card, Dr. George, because you started picking up irregularities.
Yes.
And those irregularities spoke to overspending and abuse of that card.
Yes.
The statement that came out from the Democratic Alliance this week says he paid back the money.
It said that there were limited personal expenses,
yes,
and then paid back the money.
So they lied.
Well, I don't know, because what happened was, when I took away the card at the end of March, at that point, these are the three facts. I took away the card. I did, me as the accounting officer. I did not, the committee did not, I did. So I took away the card. Then, at that stage, it was not reconciled. A very large amount of slips that proved expenses were outstanding, and there were expenses for which that card was not intended. Those are the three facts. When I put my complaint ultimately to the Federal Legal Commission, I said misappropriation. Now, they took a very narrow definition. It's definitely misuse, because any company in the world will tell you, I'll give you a credit card and you use it for, I don't know, entertaining people or people on your show, you're going to take me for dinner, whatever, that's fine, if that's fine. But you can't go use it for personal expenses.
Could you take us through what he was spending that money on?
The personal expenses and the expenses that I had concerns about, and also let me say, I never saw the Federal Legal Commission report, and I never saw the reconciliation. I don't know who did that reconciliation. So at the time I took away the card, it was not reconciled. And if it was subsequently reconciled, the question is, well, then who did it? And that needs to be answered, and there needs to be a forensic investigation. But there were expenses on Uber Eats, there were expenses on petrol, on car rental, on hotel accommodation. Now, those things are all, well, catered for. Any traveling is catered for by the party. And Uber Eats, well, certainly not. I mean, you know, what is that for? So that was my concern. And it had been brewing because, remember, the end of the financial year is the end of March. Now, you can't go across a financial year with these things outstanding. That's why I acted then. I also did write to the auditor, because obviously it needs to be audited. And I did say to the auditor that I'd taken away the card, and I was concerned about reconciliation and expenses.
So hearing what you are saying to me, it almost sounds as though there is a cover-up. And the DA has always been a party that prides itself in not being corrupt, calling out wrongdoing, based on principle and not on you know, being in power. But this sounds to me as though they're trying to sweep it under the rug and they're trying to not make any noise about it. But if you are abusing, according to what you found, and that's why you cancelled the card, a company credit card, what exactly is actually going on in the DA? Would you say that they are just trying by all means to avoid this being in the media coming out, and they want to portray themselves as the best clean party when they're actually not, according to what you're saying?
Well, that's why I'm leaving now, because that report was actually the final straw. Because I do believe that there is a move, and I think that maybe any business or organization would do that, is to move to protect itself, defend itself, because here you're talking about the leader. So I don't know, because I wasn't involved. I wasn't on the meetings when this was discussed. I don't know what the content was. I didn't see the report. I didn't see the reconciliation. I saw nothing. So I don't know. So I am only working with information that I have. And the facts I have were that that was the case when I took away the card.
You've been in the DA for 31 years. Are they good at covering up wrongdoing within the party, even by their own leader?
I do not think that the DA is of nature an organization, a party that goes covering up things. Where we have found people that have, looks like they're corrupt, etc., there's been investigations. We've done lifestyle audits, we've done forensic investigations, etc., on people. So the DA, as I know it, definitely not. That we've always been open, transparent, clear. you do
even
something
under
wrong,
John Steenhuisen.
even under John Steenhuisen, that has been the case. I do think that the party has taken a wrong turn here.
When did things start changing, in your opinion? When did they start turning to a point where you say it was a wrong turn?
I think that, look, a lot was happening when we went into the GNU because, you know, I mean, the pressure, I mean, gosh, I mean, I was not ever in government. Now suddenly I was the minister. It's a lot of work. It's hard work. It's a lot of pressure. And I think that the leadership style of Steenhuisen was not good for the organization. I think that it became, the culture started to change. Now, there's been accusations before about the DA being, well, it's toxic and it's this and that. I never experienced that. Possibly I didn't experience it because maybe I didn't see it or I wasn't involved in it. I don't know. But I don't think that was the case. I do not believe that. I do believe that the DA's belief of clean, transparent governance, holding people to account, holds. And it is also so that there is this apparent other investigation that needs to go on. But what was egregious here was there was this preliminary report that had spoken about this so-called reconciliation, that who knows who did it? I don't know. So what's going on? And also, why? There were several complaints now. So there was a complaint against me that I had gone to Brazil without permission and then to America because I went to America after Brazil. But of course, the president sent me to Brazil. And what was I supposed to do? I was being attacked. I went to America. Then, so you have to look at the context of the times of what is happening. And I do think that the party entered into a space of something is wrong here. What do you do? How do you protect the party?
So let's go into that. You started off by saying that there's been a capture by the ANC.
Yes.
Swallowed up by the ANC. John Steenhuisen has been captured because of his personal financial situation. What did you mean by captured by the ANC? John or the party?
Well, I would say that, remember, everything starts with the head. Now, the ANC still thinks that it's in control of everything, right? I was in the cabinet. I can't say anything about it because I'm not permitted to do that. It would not be legal, right? But I was there and I could see the dynamic. So the DA is a very small part of the GNU. The DA has not got a strong voice at all. It gets some things done, but not much. Now, what I talk about capture is that if you are going to hold a GNU to account and you are the DA, you must be able to credibly leave that GNU when the time comes. Now, when you are financially compromised, when you're living in government accommodation, when you've got this vulnerability, it does put the party at risk. Because what it means is, do you hold on to the GNU even if we should walk out of it? Because now the ANC knows you can never leave. That we don't know. I don't know. Also, what needs to be asked is, when the first attempts started to remove me as the minister, that first meeting was the 15th of October. At that time, John was in China with the president. I don't know whether any conversations were going on about, well, George is a problem, so he better be moved. But it was clear John was moving desperately to get me out of that position. And the conclusion I can reach, the only one, and I don't know, is that he was under duress. What was that duress?
Duress by who? You don't know.
Well, I'm asking, is the duress from the industry because George is causing these problems? Is it from the ANC that says, well, you know, he's not cooperating or he's not towing the line because, you know, I'm doing my stuff? Or is it from people who are involved in illicit wildlife trafficking, the international criminal syndicates that operate in our country? Because I did not support a very strong request that my department was trying to push through me to agree to go to CITES to support the reintroduction of the international trade on rhino horn in particular with China and Vietnam. So I don't know. I'm not speculating if I don't have the information. I can only work on information that I have. So what you're asking about, is the DA a party that hides things and is corrupt, etc. No, it is not. We are, however, in a very different space here. We are in the national government. There's lots at stake, that there are personal vulnerabilities going on. So those dynamic might very well have come into the play.
So this is what I want to ask you. Do you think John Steenhuisen is feeding into the hands of the ANC because he wants to remain in power?
Yes.
And even at the cost of his own party's policies?
Yes.
Is the DA racist?
No, the DA is not racist. What we do, I often serve on selection panels, you know, when we look at, for example, caucuses, etc. What we do is to say, right, what is the outcome of all the scoring, etc.? What does it look like? Because obviously, we as South Africans, we're a very diverse country. We pride ourselves on diversity. We want to see ourselves in places, right? So what we do in the DA is to say, right, here is a list of people that are going to go into a caucus. And then we do say, well, look, what does it look like? You know, so do we need to have more females, for example, in there? Or do we need to have more people who would represent, say, for example, black people or people who are colored? We would look at that. So I don't think that's racist. I think that's more being aware of diversity. Certainly.
So being aware of diversity is one thing,
yes.
But not wanting, I mean, if you just look at the history of what's been happening in the Democratic Alliance, there have been concerns around how black leaders have been treated. There have also been you know, some statements and remarks made around the fact that the DA has become too black or concentrated too much on black people. You saying you did not pick that up. There had been no signs of the DA doesn't stand for black people.
No, I think the complexity of the DA was when we went through a process, and I was, of course, still around, where that we became very mindful of the fact that we do need to better represent the people of South Africa,
yeah.
Because, you know, we're perceived as a white party, etc. So we would obviously want to attract more people, black people, into the party, into leadership, etc. And I think there was a concerted drive to do that, and I think that that's perfectly good and fine. I think the difficulty is that if you haven't been in the party for a very long time and you're relatively new, and then there's concerns about the so-called parachuting or whatever, it's hard. Politics is rough. So I don't think that there have been some black leaders in the party who have left, who have not succeeded in the party. But I don't believe that it's because the party is racist or particularly picked on a person. It's more the dynamic of the party. And then when they leave, like, for example, now me leaving, they're not saying, oh, well, there's an exodus of black leaders.
Yes, but I mean, you know, the thing is, Dr. George, I mean, some comments have also been made by Helen Ziller, but you say not racist.
Definitely not.
If you look back and you consider how the party has moved ever since it's joined the GNU and is now working with the ANC, which the DA has been very vocal about the ANC, cadre deployment, corrupt leaders and so forth. Would you say that the DA should have never gotten into the GNU, looking at what's happened?
That is a very hard question, because obviously the benefit of hindsight is 2020. I was a reluctant, actually, entrant into the GNU because I was very concerned about exactly that the DA, quite small, would be swallowed up by the ANC and disappear, because that happens to coalitions across the world. But here we have a very peculiar situation in South Africa. We're in transition, etc. So I do think that the best route at the time was to go into the government. And I do also think that certainly me and some of my colleagues have very valiantly wanted to move the dial, you know, move the ANC, etc. But we haven't been able to do that, specifically on black economic empowerment, foreign policy. We haven't been able to do that. But that's the big question. I mean, so if we weren't in the GNU, well, what would it then look like? But I think the caveat has to be, if we're in the GNU, we must be very clear and vocal about this is what we want. We came for this, we want this. If we can't have it, then we're going to have to leave.
And that changed,
and it has to be credible.
And that changed fundamentally when the DA decided to join the GNU. It was almost as though, would you say, the DA lost its voice?
I say so, yes, because what happened is that the DA felt that it needed to sort of be softer in a way, like, you know, because we've got to keep the coalition together. Because remember, when I was fired, there was this, well, why was it done? And then one of the narratives was that, you know, collegiality and teamwork and whatever. That's code speak for, well, he was abrasing with the ANC too much, because I was not going to just bow. And I think that that's the problem. I think with strong leadership, I think that the DA could have held itself in the GNU. I think it's battling with that now. Because if you look, for example, at my amazingly hard-working colleagues in the DA caucus in Parliament, is that they are restrained from saying various things because of the mindfulness of the fact that, well, we don't want to necessarily antagonize or etc. So that's the complication. It's not simple.
So I asked this in the context of the DA went to court regarding cadre deployment. You are now accusing John Steenhuisen of cadre deployment.
Yes.
The DA was also very vocal. I mean, he even went as far as saying the president should be removed after he was found with cash in his couch. But the DA has since gone quiet. And would you say that that is because they are in government, they are in power, they have blue lights, and they don't want to tamper with that?
I think it's to do with the context that we find ourselves in now. It is a different world, a different environment. When you're in opposition, I mean, I even know that you can say things and, you know, say government must do X, Y, and Z, but try and get it done. It's not so easy. So it's a different frame that we're in at the moment. But I do think that it certainly has been my experience. Certainly when I abrazed with my colleagues, some of the other ministers from the ANC, I got no support at all, none, from my leader, none. I was on my own. And the reason for that was because I was making the ANC unhappy. And I think that that made the situation very difficult. So I think that trying to walk that tightrope isn't easy, but I think that we didn't manage it well. I think that the DA lost something in that process. And I think also is that when the time comes to leave the GNU, if that time comes, the DA must be able to do that. And that's why I say I link the two together, because if you have a leader who will not leave because there are vulnerabilities, then you have a difficult situation.
But what do the people in the party say about this? John has had a whole probe into his misuse of the credit card. The report has come back. They were going to be probing you as well. Yes. There's been interference in your department. He's now, according to you, there's cadre deployments. Does the party not raise this? I'm trying to understand the culture within the party. The Fed chair, Helen Zille, does she not raise these things to say, what is going on here? This is unacceptable. We're a party that prides ourselves in not being corrupt. Things are done a certain way. Because the way it sounds to me, Dr. George, is that they are hiding things. They don't want people to know what's really going on. And like you said, captured by the ANC.
Well, I think I would be very, very happy if the party would carry on with these investigations. Now, I'm no longer a member of the DA because I did resign before I came on the show. But I would love those investigations to continue because they do need to be answered. And as I say, for all those hard-working councillors and MPLs and MPs and people that care about South Africa who voted DA, they want to know the answers to these questions. And if the DA has taken a bit of a curve, then it needs to be sorted out. But certainly on Helen Zille, I have an enormous amount of respect for her. I've worked with her for 15 years. And I think this situation is complicated for her because, you know, how do you actually manage all of this? There have been arguments before of people that have left the DA to say, well, you know, the DA is toxic, the environment is toxic. You see, the thing is, if you are a public representative and you can't stand your own ground, then how on earth are you going to stand ground for other people? I must fight for those lions that are in the cages and for the most vulnerable South Africans. I must do that. And if I can't stand up for myself, then how on earth am I going to do that? And I think that most people in the DA feel that way. That's how they got into this. I mean, try and be a ward councillor in a broken town. You know, it's hard, but they do. They go on. So as I said, I have an enormous amount of respect for Helen, and I feel that she has done remarkable work. In fact, if it was not for Helen Zille, the DA probably would have collapsed after the Mmusi Maimane situation.
I need to start wrapping, but I need to ask you this. Did you ever raise the alarm with Helen Ziller about why you were removed, the fact that you believe there's cadre deployment, there's interference by John Steenhuisen in other departments as the Minister of Agriculture, and there's never been an explanation as to why you were fired?
I did, yes. And
were you ignored?
I feel that I have been ignored, although there are these investigations that are ongoing. My attorneys, who are very strong and feisty like me, have been writing to the party to say, well, we need an explanation. I mean, I need an explanation because my reputation, I spent half my life in the party, and then my reputation, I'm fired because what? I'm incompetent? I'm sorry, that isn't true. Nobody believed that. They didn't believe the smear because there's never been an answer and I deserve to have one. And so I can only conclude the reason why I was moved is because it was inconvenient for me to be there, because I would have shut down that captive lion industry. I would have got that done. I would have countered illicit wildlife trafficking. I would have uplisted abalone, dried abalone, at CITES. I would have done that because I get my job done.
Should the DA exit the GNU?
I think it should
to save itself.
I think it should seriously consider it and be in a position that it can exit if it needs to exit. It must not be in a situation where its leader won't leave at under any circumstances. That's a problem. But I do believe that at the moment, the DA should be in the GNU. However, it needs to be believable that, you know what, we want these things done. We need to move the dial on BEE, for example. We need to move the dial on...
What do you mean move the dial on BEE?
Well, we need to move the dial because we need to move in the right direction. That our country, it's costing a massive amount of money. We need to have equivalence, for example. So why can't we have a situation where a company is contributing in a different way? So our model of BEE isn't working. The DA has an amazing alternative for that. We can implement that. But getting it implemented then, there has to be some line.
Is the DA morally corrupt?
Not at the moment.
What does that mean?
I think it needs to change its trajectory, and I think April is a wonderful opportunity to do that.
What's happening in April?
There's a Congress, and then there's going to...
Do you think John Steenhuisen should not be the leader?
Absolutely, 100%.
Has he destroyed the party?
I think he will, if he is not changed.
So right now, they're not morally corrupt, but they will become if John Steenhuisen remains the leader.
If we carry on going down this road, we are not going to have a party that is functional, and we are not going to have a party that's going to be able to do the job that it's supposed to do for our democracy. Our democracy is evolving, and if we do the wrong things here, we are going to hurt our country, and we must not do that. That is what I believe.
Are you going to another political party?
No.
What's your plan?
Well, I do have some plans, of course. I'm well educated, obviously, and as everybody knows, I do have a US passport, so it opens up the world a bit. I do have something that I will announce in the near future.
Okay.
Very exciting. So I don't feel defeated. I felt very hurt. I felt extremely hurt that a party that I've given half my life to can do this to me and smear me like they did. But the fact of the matter is because I'm stronger than a herd of elephants. And the chief ranger of the Kruger National Park of Sandpark says to me, you've got the endurance of a ranger. Because I always used to say, I've got the endurance of a whale. She said, no, no, you've done the ranger course, so now you've got the endurance of a ranger. And I own that because I do. And the reason why I'm here today is because I must. I cannot stay muzzled, because if I shut up, we are going to have a problem, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. So I've spoken my truth. I've got my plans for the future. I am going to have a spectacular future, and I'm not gone.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your time, Dr.
Thank you very much.
We really do appreciate your time this afternoon here on eNCA.
Thank you.
That was Dr. Deon George, and of course the breaking news is that he has resigned from the Democratic Alliance.
We're going to have plenty more to unpack. You can imagine